and welcome to this episode of the Singy Flavours Trendcast. I'm Natalie Shield, Category Manager for UK Sweet Goods Market, and in this episode we'll be discussing the low and no alcohol segment. So with the low and no alcohol segment expected to grow by 31% by 2024, according to the IWSR, we're catching up with European Business Development Manager Vicky Berry and Beverage Application Technologist Charlie Heath to find out more about what's driving this growth and what manufacturers need to focus on in order to deliver an alternative that matches up to consumers' favourite alcoholic drinks. So Vicky, I'll come to you first. The low and no alcohol segment is booming at the moment across geographies. Can you explain a bit more about why you think this is and explain some of the key drivers behind this trend as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's been multiple reasons for this. I'm not going to go into everything, but perhaps just highlighting a couple. There's definitely been this image change. It's perhaps not as trendy to drink as it was previously. And there's been this shift from work hard, play hard to people actually spending a bit more time on themselves and very much focusing in on health and wellness. And I think with that comes this focusing on alcohol intake. Perhaps another reason, looking at the Instagram effect, people don't want to be captured on social media, perhaps doing something that they wouldn't have done if they perhaps weren't drunk. So again, people are actually looking at how much they're drinking on a night out and perhaps switching. So it's not necessarily people going completely off alcohol. They're perhaps just reducing alcohol intake, and whether that be during the week or at the weekends, or perhaps just reducing the number of drinks. So I think it's really interesting to see the people that are perhaps sober curious, is a term that I've heard, and just balancing what they're drinking.
Great, thank you. And do you think the pandemic has had an impact on drinking habits, and would we expect to see some of those habits more ingrained as the pandemic eases, or anything likely to go back to old habits?
I think this is really interesting because there's been lots of stats on this, with some stats saying that people are decreasing alcohol intake, and there was a poll by, I think it's FMCG Gurus, that showed that 30% of people actually reduced their alcohol intake as a result of COVID. Now, some people actually increased their alcohol intake, and whether that's because you've got children at home, and I perhaps fell into that camp, and people were looking forward to that drink in the evening. So there's definitely been kind of multiple shifts. But I think, people that have decreased alcohol intake, I think some of these trends are going to be here to stay with the new normal. But I think one of the interesting trends is, I think, as bars are opening again and, people are going out a lot more, I think on-trade will continue to take this space a lot more seriously, and we'll see a lot more activity within launches in this area. And people actually choosing to drink a non-alcoholic drink on a night out.
Great. And then would you like to call out any key themes that you've spotted in product launches this dry January, or any new recent launches in 2021 that are particularly of note?
Yeah, I think a big thing that we've seen is kind of category blurring, and this is something myself and Charlie were having a chat about actually. So we've seen some of the profiles that are popular within cocktails actually pulling over into this space. So passion fruit martini, or passion star martini, as some people call it, or porn star martini, really led by passion fruit, is really pulling over into this space. So we're seeing lots of passion fruit mocktails coming out, which is really great to see. Another trend we've seen is coffee. So coffee is a great profile within this space. It's really complex. So it offers some of that taste complexity that you get in alcohol. So I think kind of coffee alternatives, coffee mocktails is an area that we've definitely seen innovation in. So I think this area is going to continue to stay. I think having a look at what's popular in cocktails and how those profiles can then influence, non-alcoholic spirits or mocktails is definitely going to be an area that's going to continue.
And how important would you say is the quality of the ingredients in this space? And do you think things like provenance will start to come into play a bit more in this segment?
Yeah, I think this is an area that brands get right actually within this space, and that they do really well. I think a lot of the brands really convey the messaging. And I think things like provenance helps tell us a story behind the product. If you're looking at an ingredient and you can declare Sicilian lemon, or looking at a specific fruit, I think that's really interesting. And I think there's multiple benefits. I mentioned telling a story, being able to depict either the fruit or the herb on the packaging is really important to help convey to consumers what's actually in the product, because this is still a relatively new area for consumers. So I think the messaging is really, really important. And I think also looking at price points as well, we know that non-alcoholic spirits, they're not a soft drink. And I think by communicating and using really high quality ingredients sets them apart and shows that these are better than just having a lemonade or a Coke perhaps, that using these high quality ingredients helps command that higher price point.
Great, thank you. And Charlie, I'll come to you next. So in terms of some of the challenges that might be involved in creating a low alcohol product, obviously we want to try and create a taste experience that's similar to alcohol. Could you explain a bit more about some of those challenges and how using flavors can help to overcome some of these challenges as well?
I'd say there are numerous challenges creating low and no alcohol products. Firstly, I'd say the main thing is addressing the complexity. The production of alcoholic drinks has been refined over such a long time, and some even consider it to be an art and its synergy. Here, we want to try and replicate that with our flavors as much as possible. So quite often we'll take the alcoholic product and then we'll analyze it and see what flavor components are within that product, so we can then make a flavor containing these components as well to try and mirror it as much as possible. I will then take this flavor and I'll layer it over with some extracts or some botanicals to really help deepen the flavor and to help it sit well on the palate. Another thing is mouthfeel. So there are a couple of solutions that we can offer for that. So there are things such as Scotch bonnet extract or black pepper extract as well that really help to create this mouthfeel effect.
And could you explain a bit more about the science behind flavour pairing as well, and why it's particularly useful when it comes to creating alcohol-free recipes?
So I would say that, as I said before, we analyze the components within an alcoholic product, and it might be that some of these components marry up with a component within another food ingredient. So for example, whiskey matches up quite well with a lot of citrus flavors because a component in whiskey matches up with, let's say, a particular chemical component that might be in an orange. So this really helps to bring out certain aspects of, let's say, the whiskey replica, and it really helps to deepen the flavor. It also really helps with mocktail type products, so you learn what flavors might go well together, and it really does help it to sit really nicely on the palate.
Perfect, thank you. And then finally from you, Charlie, obviously in the market we tend to see alcohol-free beer dominate the market quite a bit, and do you think that is to do with the fact that it's quite challenging with particular applications, and maybe things like spirits are harder to replicate than something like a beer in alcohol-free?
Low no-alcohol beer has really been the hero of this category. It's been worked on for a long time, so I'd say that the products out there actually have a really good offering, whereas I'd say something like spirits, they're probably a little bit behind in the game to try and get to this level. I think one explanation of that could be is because the amount of alcohol within a spirit is a lot more than would be present in a beer. So with this extra alcohol, you lack in that mouthfeel sometimes. So you might want to include other components that might help with the mouthfeel. Also, the presence of alcohol in these products does help with solubility. So the flavors go into the products really well. But when you take this alcohol out, you can have issues with clarity. So that is something that we have done a lot of development in, and we've produced some flavors that will help to sit in a beverage, have really good impact, and have a good clarity in the drink.
Perfect, thank you. And then Vicky, coming back to you, so obviously within this segment, a lot of the focus is about replicating the taste of beer or wine or spirits. But do you think there's something to be said for beverage innovations that go in a little bit of a different direction? And are there any key trends we're seeing in the soft drink space that could tempt the sober curious consumer?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question, Natalie. I think we're going to see more of that blurring and category blurring. And where does a soft drink kind of end and where does a non-alcoholic spirit start? So I definitely think we're going to see more of that category blurring. Like we'll perhaps see juniper coming across into soft drinks. You'll perhaps see a juniper soda, just as an example. So I definitely think there's going to be those blurred lines that perhaps newer consumers to this space actually might want a premium soft drink, a premium soda, or even, we've seen people just drinking tonics by themselves, which is really interesting. So I definitely think we'll see more within this area of premium sodas, premium drinks, as consumers, have a look at what they're drinking in the evening, and do they want an alcohol alternative, or do they just want a drink that tastes great? So I think that's definitely going to be an area we're going to see come through.
Great. And Vicky, what are your predictions for the future of this market? And is there anything in particular that we should be looking out for, say in 2022 or beyond that?
Yeah, I think it's good to have a look at other categories and trends that we're seeing there and how they might influence. So one trend that we've seen actually within soft drinks, but also in alcohol, is something like next generation citrus. So a move away from just orange or lemon to people actually wanting something like a mandarin or a clementine. So I think trends that we're seeing there will definitely pull across. Something else I think we'll see, if you have a look on the alcohol side, we know that rum and tequila is becoming more popular. So I think we'll start to see more alcohol alternatives within that space. So whether people will be looking more at tequila, and looking to mimic some of that complexity will be really interesting. And I think what's great to do as well is to have a look at pairing charts. So we've actually analysed different alcohols to understand, the complexity of them, as Charlie mentioned, and look at those key compounds and how you compare with those key compounds. So if people are looking at tequila alternatives as an example, something citrusy might work particularly well. So it's really important to understand that area. So I guess those would be some of my predictions that I could see coming through, having a look at trends from other categories, having a look at different spirits, so the likes of tequila, and then perhaps again, more kind of cocktail inspiration, as I mentioned at the start. So seeing more of these cocktail profiles come across. So perhaps mojito twists, perhaps something around more passion style martinis, espresso martinis. I think it'll be really interesting to see.
Sounds great. I'm looking forward to looking out for these on the shelf when they come through. And then finally, Vicky, could you just let everyone know where they can find out more information about Synergy Flavours offering in low and no alcohol, and if they want to find out more about our expertise in this area?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a few places to look out for information from Synergy. So big one, continue to follow us on LinkedIn, or if you're not following us already on LinkedIn, have a look. Our website as well, we're constantly updating the information with new blogs. So we've actually got a new blog on Low and No at the moment. So feel free to go and have a look at the blog there and have a look at the content within our website.
Perfect, thank you. So that's it for the latest episode of the Synergy Flavours Trendcast. Huge thank you to Vicky and to Charlie for joining me today for some great insights and discussion. As Vicky said, make sure you follow us on all of our social media channels, on LinkedIn, on Instagram and Twitter. And also please make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Spotify so you can access the latest Trendcast episodes as soon as they go live. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.